There's a silent signal in human beings, one that doesn't scream, doesn't bleed, but corrodes even the soul. Kafka saw it and called it an invisible threat. Have you ever felt something strange inside you? That feeling that something isn't right, even when everything seems normal? Franz Kafka, a writer who lived long ago, discovered this secret about us. He realized that sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from outside, but grows within us like a hidden plant. Imagine waking up one day and feeling like your life is like a meaningless dream. You go to school, play with friends, and come home, but something feels off. It's as if you're just following the rules without understanding why. Kafka saw this feeling in many people and wrote stories to show us this invisible danger. What would be scarier, a monster with sharp teeth, or waking up one day and realizing you've become a person you no longer recognize? Kafka shows us that the latter is much scarier because it happens slowly, without us even realizing it. It's like a silent transformation that steals away who we truly are. This is the beginning of our journey to understand the most dangerous sign Kafka discovered in us humans. A sign that many adults carry without knowing it, and that even children can begin to sense. It's a story about how we can lose ourselves within ourselves, but also about how we can find ourselves again. Kafka didn't describe monsters with fangs or claws, but social mechanisms that crush ordinary people. He lived in a time when people were beginning to work in large offices with lots of rules and paperwork. Imagine a giant school where no one knows who's really in charge, only that they must obey seemingly endless rules. He observed boredom, routine, and the weight of bureaucracy, and showed how these mechanisms rob life of its essence. Have you ever seen adults who seem perpetually tired, always doing the same things every day? Kafka realized that this kind of life can be dangerous for the human spirit. It's as if we were a cog in a large machine, always making the same movements without much thought as to why. In his stories, Kafka shows us people who wake up one day and realize they're living lives they didn't choose. Imagine if you discovered you were in a play, but no one gave you the script. You just imitate what others do, without understanding why. That would be scary, wouldn't it? Thus, we realize that the most dangerous sign isn't in others, but originates within ourselves, when we accept living like cogs in a machine. It's when we stop asking why and just go with the flow. It's when we forget to feel things, to get emotional, to be truly sad or happy. Kafka wasn't a scientist, he was a storyteller, but he saw something important about human beings. We can get lost in rules and routines. We can forget who we are. It's as if our souls are trapped in an invisible cage. If this topic resonates with you, if you've ever felt like you sometimes do things without really knowing why, or if you've noticed adults living lives that seem colorless and flavorless, then you're beginning to see what Kafka saw. This space is for those who seek to see beyond the surface, for those who want to understand not only the world, but also what happens inside us. Few notice this sign. It appears when someone feels their life has lost its flavor, but continues to move forward, following rules, obeying the invisible. Imagine a tasteless ice cream cone. You keep eating it because it's the right thing to do, but you no longer feel that joy. This is how many lives Kafka observed. It's the human being who no longer questions, who walks aimlessly, living on autopilot. You may have seen this in some adults. They wake up, work, come home, sleep, and repeat it all the next day. Their eyes seem to no longer sparkle. Their laughter no longer comes from the heart. It's as if they're just playing the role of person without truly experiencing what it means to be a person. This awareness is rare because most people don't even see the void they're sinking into. It's as if we're in a river being carried by the current, and we think we're swimming by choice. Most people don't realize they're just going with the flow without making any real choices. Kafka saw that children can still feel this emptiness. Children like you still ask why, and don't accept answers like because, or because that's the way things are. But little by little, many people lose this curiosity, this desire to question. They begin to accept things as they are, even when they don't make sense. The most dangerous sign is precisely when we stop feeling that something is wrong. It's when we accept the absurd as normal. Imagine if, one day, everyone started walking backward and said it was the right thing to do. If everyone did this, it would soon seem normal, and anyone who tried to walk forward would be seen as strange. Kafka shows us that many things in our society are like this. They don't make sense, but we accept them because everyone does. This is the rare sign that few notice. The feeling that something isn't right, even when everyone says it is. It's like a small discomfort, an itch in the mind that won't go away. And those who can sense this have a special, though sometimes painful gift. The gift of seeing beyond appearances. Those who feel this weight experience isolation. It's like being in a crowded room and noticing everyone smiling mechanically while you listen to the silence. Imagine being the only person who notices the king is naked, while everyone else pretends to admire his invisible garments. This is the feeling of seeing what Kafka saw. That's the price. The feeling of not belonging, of carrying a lucidity that hurts. When you start questioning why things are the way they are, people often don't like it. They prefer to keep doing what they've always done, without much thought. It's easier, more comfortable. But for those who see the void, that comfort no longer exists. Kafka wrote about characters who felt strange, different from others. They couldn't fit into the world around them, and this caused great sadness, a feeling of loneliness. It's as if they spoke a language no one else understood. Children often experience this at school. When a child asks, "Why do we have to line up?" or "Why can't we learn through play all the time?" they're questioning the rules. And adults don't always have good answers. Sometimes they just say, "Because," or "Because I say so." This makes the child feel awkward, as if their thinking is wrong. The price of difference is also feeling more deeply. While some can live on the surface, those who see beyond feel the joys more intensely, but also the sorrows. It's like having a superpower you sometimes wish you didn't have. You see things others don't, feel things others don't. Kafka teaches us that this price, however painful, is worth it, because it's better to be awake, even alone, than to sleep with the crowd. It's better to feel, even if it hurts, than to feel nothing. If this has ever touched you in any way, if you've ever felt different or strange for thinking differently, know that you're not alone. Many people around the world feel the same way, and maybe this is the first step to finding others who are also awake. Imagine Gregor Samsa, a Kafka character, who wakes up one day transformed into an insect. It sounds like a horror story, doesn't it? But the real story isn't about a man who turns into a giant insect. It's about what happens afterward. Before becoming an insect, Gregor was a salesman who worked hard to support his family. He didn't like the work, but he kept doing it because he felt it was his duty. Every day he woke up early, took the train, visited clients, and returned home late. It was as if he were a machine programmed to work. When Gregor wakes up transformed into an insect, the first thing that worries him isn't his strange body, but rather that he's going to be late for work. This shows how stuck in his routine he was, how he'd forgotten to think about himself. The real tragedy wasn't the metamorphosis, but the family's indifference, the coldness of everyday life that treated him like a disposable object. At first, Gregor's family was frightened and confused, but soon they began to warm up, and little by little they began to treat Gregor not as a person, but as a problem, a foreign object in the way. They stopped talking to him, put old furniture in his room, and forget to clean. It's as if Gregor disappeared from their view before he even died. And the saddest thing is that Gregor accepts this treatment. He hides when guests arrive, eats only leftovers, and tries not to disturb them. He accepts being treated as something less than human. So too, we are crushed, not by monsters, but by the apathy that reduces us to functions. Many people are like Gregor before the transformation. They live only to work, to fulfill duties, to not cause trouble. And when something changes, when they can no longer be useful in the same way, they are cast aside. This story teaches us that the real monster isn't the insect, but the society that treats people as disposable objects. The real horror is how Gregor was forgotten, how his family stopped seeing him as a person. What about you? Have you ever felt like Gregor? As if people only liked you for what you do, not for who you are? As if your worth depended on being useful, following the rules, not causing trouble? This is the silent transformation Kafka warns us about. We don't have to become insects to be treated as something less than human. This dangerous sign is the silent surrender of being human. It's when someone gives up their voice, accepts the absurd without protest, and lives only to avoid causing trouble. Imagine a child who has many ideas, dreams, and questions. But little by little, this child learns to be quiet, not to ask too many questions, to simply follow what they're told. This is the beginning of surrender. It's the emptying of one's own existence, where the individual dissolves into social mechanisms. You know when you play with Play-Doh and mix all the colors together? In the end, it's a strange, dull color. That's how many people end up. They lose their special colors, their unique characteristics, and blend in with everyone else. Kafka showed that true terror lies not in external creatures, but in the normalization of dehumanization. We don't need movie monsters to scare us. What's scariest is how people can treat others as if they were things, numbers, machines, and how this can seem normal. In Kafka's stories, we see characters who are judged without knowing why, who are imprisoned without knowing their crime, who work in places where no one explains the meaning of their actions. This may seem exaggerated, but look around. How many times have you heard someone say, "It's this way because it's always been this way"? How many rules are there that no one can explain? Psychoanalysis, a way of studying the human mind, helps us understand this phenomenon. It suggests that sometimes to feel accepted and loved, we hide parts of ourselves. We keep our true desires, our difficult questions, our strange feelings hidden, and over time, we may even forget these parts exist. Existentialism, a way of thinking about life, tells us that each of us is responsible for creating meaning for our own existence. There's no ready-made manual or right path for everyone. Each person needs to discover what gives meaning to their life. But this is scary. It's easier to follow everyone else's lead than to create our own path. The dangerous sign Kafka saw is when we give up this search for meaning, when we stop questioning, when we accept living a life we didn't truly choose. It's as if we're sleeping with our eyes open, walking through life without truly being present. And the most dangerous thing is that this process happens so slowly that we barely notice. It's like the story of the frog. If you put a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cold water and slowly heat it up, it doesn't realize the danger until it's too late. Anyone who tries to resist this fate comes into conflict with the collective. Society rejects those who overthink, those who refuse to smile at the imposed pace. It's like when a child in school asks, "Why?" too many times, and adults get impatient. They say, "Stop questioning and just do what I tell you." Therefore, the lucid person is often ridiculed, seen as strange, out of place. In Kafka's stories, we see people who perceive the absurdity of life and try to point it out to others. But instead of being heard, they are treated as crazy or problematic. Imagine a play where all the actors follow the script except one. This actor realizes the script doesn't make sense and tries to change his line. The other actors are confused and irritated. They don't want the play to change, even if it's strange. They prefer to continue doing what they already know. This happens in classrooms, in families, in groups of friends. When someone starts questioning the rules, thinking differently, others often feel threatened. It's as if that person is breaking an invisible agreement. We pretend everything makes sense, and you shouldn't break that illusion. Psychoanalysis teaches us that groups fear what's different, what's new. The group prefers to keep things as they are, even if it's not good for everyone. It's easier to follow the old rules than to create new ones together. Existentialism tells us that this conflict is necessary. To be authentic, to truly live, we must face this discomfort. We must be willing to be different, to question, even when it leaves us alone. In his stories, Kafka shows us characters who feel this conflict. They sense something is wrong in the world around them, but when they try to talk about it, no one understands. It's like trying to explain a new color to someone who's never seen it. Conflict with the collective can be painful. It can bring loneliness, misunderstanding, even rejection. But it also brings freedom. Those who can think for themselves, who can see beyond appearances, gain a special kind of freedom that no one can take away. Inner freedom. If this idea resonated with you, write the word awakening in the comments. I want to see how many of you here have felt this rupture with the collective. This moment when you realize that the path of the majority isn't always the best path. The greatest danger is not perceiving emptiness, but allowing oneself to be shaped by it until one loses one's identity. Imagine a river that gradually carves a path in the earth. Over time, this path becomes so deep that the river can no longer change its course. This is what happens to us when we accept for too long a life we didn't choose. It's living a life that isn't yours, accepting imposed roles, dying silently before your body is buried. Kafka wrote about people who wake up one day and realize they've lived years without truly living. They went to work, came home, ate, slept, but didn't truly experience life. They didn't choose their path, they just went with the flow. This is death in life, the metamorphosis everyone risks undergoing. It's as if the person has become a robot that does everything right but has lost the ability to feel, to be moved, to be surprised. The heart still beats, but something inside is dormant. Children can still see this danger. They sense when adults are only feigning interest, when they are physically present but mentally distant. They sense when someone is dead inside, even if they continue to walk and talk. Existentialism teaches us that each person is responsible for creating meaning for their own life. There's no one-size-fits-all manual. Each person needs to discover what makes their life meaningful, what makes their heart beat faster. Psychoanalysis shows us that we often hide our true desires and fears from ourselves. We create masks to please others, and over time, we can mistake the mask for our true face. The real danger is when this mask sticks so tightly to our face that we can't take it off, when we forget who we really are, when we stop listening to that inner voice that tells us, "This isn't right," or "There's more to life than this." Kafka warns us of this danger through his strange and disturbing stories. He wants us to wake up before it's too late, before we completely transform into something we are not. The danger sign isn't just being trapped in a meaningless life, but accepting this prison as if it were normal, as if it were all we can hope for. It's when we stop dreaming of something better, when we give up looking for a way out. But there is a way out. Awareness that it hurts can also be the key. Recognizing the danger sign is the first step. It's like waking up from a strange dream and realizing you can choose a different path. Questioning, writing, creating, rebelling in small actions. This is giving yourself back the right to exist. We don't need to make huge revolutions. We can start with small changes, asking why when something doesn't make sense, dedicating time to doing what we truly enjoy, paying attention to our true feelings. Kafka didn't leave us escape manuals, but mirrors. His stories are like strange mirrors that reveal parts of ourselves we don't normally see. When we read about a man who turns into an insect or someone who is judged without knowing why, we are seeing distorted reflections of our own reality. It's up to each person to decide whether to remain a play or tear up the paper to write another destiny. This doesn't mean abandoning everything and living without rules. It means consciously choosing which rules make sense, which paths we want to follow. Existentialism teaches us that we are free to choose, but we are also responsible for our choices. We cannot blame others for the path we follow. Even when it seems we have no choice, there are always small freedoms, small decisions that are ours alone. Psychoanalysis shows us that we can better understand our hidden desires and fears. We can learn to listen to that inner voice we often silence. We can discover who we are beyond the masks we wear to please others. The path of transformation begins with a small awakening. It's like when you're almost asleep and suddenly something calls you back to consciousness. It could be a sound, a light, a thought, something that makes you realize, wait, I was almost asleep without realizing it. For some people, this awakening comes through art, a book, a song, a film that shows life differently. For others, it comes through pain, a loss, a disappointment, a difficult moment that forces them to rethink everything. And for still others, it comes through an encounter with someone who is already awake, someone who sees the world through different eyes. No matter how it begins, the important thing is to keep this awakening alive, to keep questioning, searching, creating, not letting the world lull us back to sleep with its empty routines and meaningless rules. The most dangerous sign is not to be crushed by the world, but to accept this crushing as if it were natural. Kafka's words resonate to this day because they touch something deep within us. They remind us that we can choose not to accept the absurd as normal. We live in a world that often seems meaningless, a world where people are treated like numbers, where someone's worth is measured by how much they produce or how much they earn, a world where haste replaces presence, where virtual connections replace genuine glances. But within this world, there are people who remain awake, people who question, who feel, who seek to truly live, not just exist, people who, like Kafka, can see beyond appearances and have the courage to point out what they see, even when it's difficult. You can be one of these people. You can choose to be aware of the signs that you're losing your essence. You can decide every day to live consciously, not on autopilot. You can create small islands of meaning in a sea of nonsense. It's not an easy path. Sometimes it hurts to see what others don't. Sometimes it's exhausting to swim against the current, but it's a path worth taking because it's the path of those who are truly alive. If you've experienced something similar, share in the comments what you felt or what you're looking for today. Your story can help others realize they're not alone on this journey. Also, watch the video on the card. It continues this dive into existential questions that we all face, even when we pretend they don't exist. And if this reflection resonated, please like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be feeling like something isn't right but can't quite put a name to it. Your words could be the mirror they need to see themselves more clearly. Remember, awakening begins with a simple question. Is the life I'm living truly mine? Or am I just following a script written by others? The answer may be frightening, but it can also be liberating. And this freedom, however painful it may be at times, is what makes us truly human.